Link TV, connecting you to the world. Link TV is viewer supported. Watch more at linktv.org.
Link TV presents Mosaic World News from the Middle East. Here are today's top stories.
NATO changes rules of engagement in Libya. Syrian regime denies reports of a mass grave in Daraa. And Omani reform activists denounce crackdown on protesters. Mosaic World News from the Middle East begins now.
Syrian activists reported that Syrian security forces stormed two towns, Kalakar in Rif Dimashq and Nawa in Daraa province, leading to fatalities.
On the other hand, the Syrian Interior Ministry denied the report of a mass grave discovered in Daraa containing the remains of 13 people whom Syrian rights groups say were killed there.
The Syrian Interior Ministry said the report was completely false and was part of an incitement campaign against the country.
The Financial Times quoted British Minister of State for Armed Forces Nick Harvey saying that there is a possibility that the International Criminal Court will issue an arrest warrant to the Syrian president, Bashar al-Assad, over what he referred to as Assad's role in the repressive operations against protesters.
An official source in the Interior Ministry stated that certain TV stations and media networks aired reports from eyewitnesses on the existence of a mass grave in Daraa. This was part of these media networks' campaign of incitement, slandering, and news fabrication against Syria and their continuous attempts to undermine the stability of the country and the safety of its citizens. The official source confirmed that this report is completely and absolutely false.
So the Syrian Interior Ministry denies it. There is no mass grave, but an incitement campaign or conspiracy, according to the repetitive description on Syrian state media. But eyewitnesses and rights groups assert that a real mass grave, not an imaginary one, was discovered by residents. They said they found the bodies of specific people in a region where most residents know each other well. The decomposed bodies that were found included that of 60-year-old Abdulaziz Abazaid, 4 of Abazaid's children, and an unidentified woman and her son. An eyewitness who saw what the soldiers of his country did to its citizens at night in Daraa confirmed this.
I was one of the people who discovered this mass grave. We can confirm that this grave was made by Syrian soldiers because we saw the burial process. We waited very patiently until we could reach the site.
Independent media networks and regional and international rights organizations are barred from entering Daraa to investigate the veracity of these eyewitnesses' stories or the government's denial of the matter. In light of this restriction, these images remain the only source for the world to see, whether it wants to believe it, doubt it, or deny it. While the government is accused of committing crimes and illegal killings, it becomes clear that the Syrian authorities deny such accusations, but have not initiated the formation of an investigation committee to immediately verify the authenticity of these images and the identities of the people in them. They have not spoken or given any hint of their intention to punish the perpetrators involved in the conspiracy, if it is confirmed by the investigation committee that was never created. What the Daraa residents have been saying since the events in Syria began may seem like a one-sided story. However, the atrocities committed in their story seem to be in line with the images released on the opposition's websites. They spoke of another burial operation in the fields, entire families being killed, corpses in streets suddenly seized and never returned to their families. Others in Daraa went as far as saying that operations were conducted by government institutions to clean up scenes of what they believe to be crimes. According to their statements, their operations to repair buildings, houses, and streets that were bombed by artillery shells in Daraa. In their opinion, this explains the Syrian authorities' rejection of the entry of an international team to investigate the humanitarian situation there. However, the images not only testify to what happened, but also to what is still happening, according to the opposition. Here's a video that was released on a comprehensive website showing Al-Omani Mosque in Daraa with a Syrian army tank tank in front of it. The opposition refers to the date of this video, saying that this confirms the army has not withdrawn from the city's central areas, but continues to mass there. These are images taken on May 8th, showing Syrian tanks entering the town of Da'al, near Daraa. These events prompted cities and towns across the country to continue protesting in solidarity with Daraa and its residents. For instance, protests erupted here in the town of Baba Amer in Homs and Sakba Narif Damashq, both carrying slogans to topple the regime, even though the price for doing so could be death in broad daylight.
Dozens of young Syrian communists have staged a sit-in in front of the French embassy to protest the French government's policy towards the incidents witnessed in parts of Syria. The sit-in groups denounced French officials' statements and their meddling in Syrian internal affairs. The protesters also rejected any foreign intervention in their country, reiterating that the Syrian people are capable of solving their own problems and countering the crisis. They also denounced the conspiracies being hatched abroad in a bid to undermine the Syrian nation and weaken its position.
We're here to remind French colonizers of the most brilliant French colonizer, General Charles de Gaulle, who said that anyone who thinks he could conquer Syria is a dreamer. The French are the ones who committed crimes in Syria, in Ghouta, Jabal Arab, and the Harika neighborhood. They also committed crimes in Algeria and against the Egyptian people during the trilateral aggression on Egypt. They are not qualified to teach us lessons about humanity and democracy. The Syrian people are capable of dictating their own affairs. No to colonizers' intervention.
We came to the French embassy today to tell them we are always ready to teach the colonizers a lesson that they will never forget. No one shall disrupt our nation.
We stand united as a nation. The entire Syrian nation opposes any foreign intervention. Syrians of all sects are standing together against any colonizing power and its intervention. Syria will not kneel down.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said he informed the Libyan envoys in Moscow that Tripoli must comply with all stipulations in the UN resolution on the situation in Libya. He indicated that he requested Libyan authorities to put an end to all operations against civilians and directly and fully implement the Security Council's resolution. NATO launched new airstrikes at dawn this morning, which targeted the headquarters of the Interior Security Institution and the Ministry for Inspection and Popular Control in the Libyan capital, Tripoli. The two headquarters are located in a residential and administrative neighborhood in central Tripoli near Bab el-Aziziya, the Libyan leader Muammar al-Gaddafi's main residence.
More NATO airstrikes were launched against the Libyan leader, Colonel Muammar al-Gaddafi's regime in the capital of Tripoli. This time, the shelling targeted the police headquarters and a building of the Ministry for Inspection and Popular Control. The Libyan authorities invited journalists to the site struck by the air raid. The spokesman for the Libyan government, Musa Ibrahim, said that one of the two buildings contained documents with detailed information of corruption cases against officials who defected from Gaddafi's regime and joined the opposition.
The targets were primarily in civilian neighborhoods and residential areas. Therefore, residents were terrified. Limited damages were also caused to nearby houses. So how does that help protect civilians?
وتأتي الغارة الأخيرة في إطار تصعيد الضغط الدولي على القذافي وبعد إشارة رئيس.
The latest airstrike comes in the framework of escalating international pressure on Gaddafi. British Army Chief of Staff David Richards indicated there is a change to the rules of the engagement with Gaddafi's battalions. In other words, direct attacks may be launched on the infrastructure supporting Gaddafi's regime. Richards also said that if Gaddafi happens to be in the command and control center struck by the coalition and is killed, it will be within the framework of the new rules of engagement. Gaddafi's regime is trying to break from the international isolation it has been suffering from. Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, met with the Libyan government delegation to discuss the situation in Libya. The Russian foreign minister said he informed the Libyan delegation of the significance of complying with the UN resolution. Yasser Bardisi, BBC.
إلى الملف اليمني، حيث أعلنت مصادر أمنية يمنية مقتل 3 جنود.
Yemeni security sources said that 3 soldiers were killed, including a member of the intelligence agency, in an attack by unidentified gunmen on the checkpoint in the southeastern Yemeni province of Hadramaut. The sources added that gunmen fired at the checkpoint from a car, leading to the deaths of 2 central security soldiers and a political delegate. In addition, 1 soldier was injured.
انضم عدد من عناصر الحرس الجمهوري اليمني.
A number of Republican Guard forces joined the demonstrators in the capital of Sana'a, while hundreds of thousands marched in the northern Cede province. They demanded the downfall of President Ali Abdullah Saleh's regime. In Taiz, located to the south of Sana'a, thousands took to the streets to condemn the use of violence against demonstrators. Meanwhile, the leaders of the protest movement rejected the Cooperation Council's deal to end the crisis.
Demonstrations demanding the downfall of the Yemeni regime began 4 months ago, and the Yemeni people continue to protest across the country. In the northern Sa'd province, tens of thousands took to the streets demanding President Ali Abdullah Saleh's immediate resignation. The protesters condemned the regime's use of violence and vowed to continue the demonstrations until they attain their demands. In Taiz, located to the south of Sana'a, the same scene was repeated. Thousands called for the downfall of President Saleh and rejected the initiatives that aimed to prolong the regime's life. In Sana'a, dozens of Republican Guard forces demonstrated and joined the protesters, reiterating the same demands. Politically, the regime raised the tone of its political speech, holding on to what it calls constitutional legitimacy. This comes after the regime justified its positions with a dose of the Persian Gulf Cooperation Council's consecutive initiatives. However, the leaders of the Yemeni protest movement rejected Council Delegate Abdul Latif al-Zayani's attempt to revive a plan to end demonstrations. They called for withdrawing the initiative as it does not meet the demands of the Yemeni people, and modifications to the plan have been made in the interest of the regime. In addition, they believe the plan does not respect the rights of the people demanding the removal of the president. Al-Zayani arrived in Sana'a for another final attempt to revive the power transition deal that the opposition believes lacks credibility. The opposition now views the Cooperation Council as part of the conflict instead of a mere mediator. For this reason, the Yemeni people are now suspicious of any new initiative or revised plan, making the Council's deal a failure even before its initiation.
Story this hour. Bahrain's parliament has voted to accept the resignation of 7 remaining opposition lawmakers. The MPs walked out of parliament along with 11 others in February in protest at the regime's suppression of anti-government protesters. In March, the 40-member parliament accepted the resignation of 11 of the 18 opposition MPs. Earlier this month, gunmen abducted 2 of the resigned lawmakers. Anti-regime demonstrations continue across the country despite a heavy-handed response by the Saudi-backed Bahraini forces. Scores have been killed since the uprising began in mid-February. The government has arrested a number of opposition leaders and political activists.
A prominent Bahraini human rights activist says he was threatened with rape while in the government custody. Abdul Hadi Al-Khawaja says regime loyalists also threatened to rape his daughter after he refused to apologize to the king for involvement in anti-regime demonstrations. Rights groups say that he raised allegations of abuse in 3 trial sessions, but was silenced by the judge on each occasion. Human Rights Watch said that last week, Khawaja bears visible signs of ill treatment. It called on Britain to set up an impartial commission to look into his allegations of torture. Khawaja is among 21 opposition figures charged with participating in illegal rallies. A military court has sentenced 7 of the activists to jail terms of between 1 and 3 years. Well, a group of activists in Oman say that authorities have arrested human rights activists calling for reforms in that country.
Well, the group has released a statement calling the arrest disappointing.
We strongly condemn the repression and restrictions to the legitimate right of activists to express themselves peacefully. The arrests targeting those who are calling for rational dialogue are disappointing.
The statement does not say how many people have been arrested. It says the activists were detained after staging a sit-in on Thursday. This to demand the release of opposition protesters held since demonstrations began in February. Oman's security services said on Friday a number of people have been arrested for what it called inciting unrest and sedition in Muscat and Salalah city. Oman was the scene of anti-government protests earlier this year demanding better living conditions. The protesters were also angry with what they called corrupt officials. To quell the protests, Sultan Qaboos announced a cabinet reshuffle and more jobs.
And now to Egypt, where ousted President Hosni Mubarak is expected to apologize to Egyptians for any offense caused to the nation. Now, reports that say that Mubarak will soon address the Egyptian people to ask for forgiveness on behalf of himself and his family. He is also expected to announce his readiness to relinquish his assets and to plead for amnesty. Mubarak and his wife are under arrest in a hospital in Sharm el-Sheikh. Now, they reportedly both suffered heart attacks during questioning over corruption charges. Both are charged with abusing their positions. Now, Egyptians are opposed to giving amnesty to Mubarak for ordering the killings of scores of protesters. He was toppled in February following weeks of anti-government protests.
Elsewhere in the news now, the Pakistani military says it has lodged a, quote, strong protest with NATO over the incursion of US-led helicopters into its airspace. 2 US-led choppers attacked a security checkpost in Daraa region in North Waziristan, wounding 2 Pakistani soldiers. Officials say the soldiers sustained injuries in an exchange of fire with the foreign troops. The alliance has confirmed an incident involving its helicopters, saying an investigation is underway. Islamabad has frequently criticized the airstrikes, calling them unilateral US action and a violation of Pakistan's sovereignty.
And remaining in Pakistan, 5 militants have been killed in a bombing and shootout in the southwest province of Baluchistan. Now, the militants attacked a security checkpoint near the city of Quetta with bombs and guns. Police say that all of them were killed in the following shootout. Now, no group has claimed responsibility for the attack so far. Pakistan's security landscape has been marred by growing acts of militancy and violence in recent days.
An officer from the Iraqi Interior Ministry's Criminal Investigation Department was killed in a drive-by shooting this morning southwest of Baghdad. The officer was killed by a group of terrorists using silenced firearms. A police source said that Colonel Jassim Muhammad was martyred near his home in the Hammel neighborhood. Muhammad was on his way to work when he was gunned down. Meanwhile, the Hawija provincial police chief, Colonel Kasi Arif, escaped an assassination attempt during a sticky bomb attack on his car west of Kirkuk.
State Minister of National Reconciliation Affairs, Amir al-Kuzahi, said that certain armed groups have volunteered to surrender their weapons in the coming weeks as part of the national reconciliation efforts launched by the government.
A number of armed groups announced that they will be giving up their weapons in the coming weeks as part of the national reconciliation. Security, peace, and stability must be restored in Iraq. The people are realizing that peace and security are the only way to live in harmony and coexistence. This is part of our dialogue with the armed factions and tribes.
Today, a Fallujah police force discovered the bodies of 21 unidentified civilians buried near Al-Ma'adiyya cemetery. The bodies were found wrapped in black body bags with serial numbers. A police source said that initial reports indicate the victims were killed between 2004 and 2005, as corroborated by the victims' remains and their civilian clothing, which match missing persons reports filed by their families.
Israel is prepared to cede parts of its homeland for true peace with the Palestinians, but there is no partner on the Palestinian side. This from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu last night to the Knesset, firing the opening shot of a very busy diplomatic week. IBA's Eli Wogelenter reports.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said last night that he would be willing to withdraw to the West Bank settlement blocks and leave only an Israeli military presence in the Jordan Valley if an agreement is reached for a demilitarized Palestinian state. He said that the Palestinian government, which is half composed of Hamas, is not one Israel could make peace with, and that the root of the conflict is not the absence of a Palestinian state, but the Palestinian opposition to the establishment of the State of Israel. The Palestinians threw the blame back onto Israel.
Mr. Netanyahu knows that he has a full partner, and President Mahmoud Abbas and the Palestinian Authority. I'm sure he heard the President's speech in the reconciliation meeting in Cairo. He heard him reiterating the commitments of two states, agreements signed and so on. But the question is, have you ever heard Mr. Netanyahu saying he recognized the state of Palestine in 67 lines?
Netanyahu's speech before the Knesset last night kicked off a week of major addresses and meetings. On Thursday at the State Department, U.S. President Barack Obama will deliver his long-awaited speech on the Middle East, his first major address on the subject since his June 2009 Cairo speech. Obama and Netanyahu will then meet on Friday to discuss where the peace process is headed. Obama will deliver a speech to the annual American-Israel Public Affairs Committee meeting on Sunday morning. Netanyahu will deliver his speech to AIPAC on Monday, and Netanyahu will then address a joint session of Congress on Tuesday. Various news reports are speculating that Obama may urge Israel to halt West Bank settlement expansion and return to the 1967 borders, while at the same time he will also reject the Palestinian Authority's planned bid to obtain recognition as a state at the United Nations next September. State Department spokesman Mark Toner said final status issues can only be resolved through direct negotiations.
As you said, ultimately, all these are issues that were raised today are issues that can only be resolved through direct negotiations, and that remains our ultimate goal here. But we look forward to Prime Minister Netanyahu's visit at the end of this week with the President.
The position that Netanyahu will likely stake out in the United States was made clear last night when the Prime Minister said Israel must stop blaming itself for the conflict and start looking at the situation with open eyes. Quote, "This is not a conflict about 1967, but about 1948, when the State of Israel was established. The Palestinians call this day a catastrophe, but their catastrophe is that their leadership has not managed to reach a compromise. Today, they still don't have leadership that is ready to recognize Israel as the nation state of the Jewish people." Eli Wagalanter, IBA News.
A national day of mourning was held in Lebanon's Palestinian refugee camps as funerals for martyrs were held in the camps of Sana'a and Taiz. Palestinian refugees affirm their persistence of their right of return at all costs.
Following the Israeli aggression on participants in the March of the Return in Maroun al-Ras and the martyrdom of 11 Palestinians and the injury of over 100, a day of mourning was announced in all Palestinian refugee camps. Black banners were raised, flags were lowered, and schools and shops were closed. The movement varied in each camp, but all met at the same junction, the feeling of the Nakba's bitterness and martyrdom's sweetness. In the Ain al-Hilwa camp, the honoring of martyrs equaled their level of sacrifice. Palestinians in the camp held a funeral for 3 martyrs who fell from the Zionist enemy's gunfire amid the camp's day of mourning. The funeral witnessed heavy gunfire from machine guns and takbir chants. One of the first martyrs was from Darbisim.
My brother is a martyr. We hold our heads high because he is a martyr.
His martyrdom is the martyrdom of the return. I envy his death.
Refugee camps in Tyre held a funeral for 2 martyrs from the Al-Bas and Al-Burj al-Shamali camps, with massive funeral processions amid sounds of cries of condemnation and takbir chants. The Palestinians affirmed their right of return, even at the cost of blood.
What have we done to God, the Lord of the worlds? What have we done? One martyr was killed from one Nakba to another Nakba. Oh, Mother.
He was standing on the fence throwing stones. I was next to him and a woman was in front of him. When I came back, I saw he was hit and there were no ambulances. It took about 30 minutes for the ambulance to come.
All of us say that we would die just to get some of our homeland soil.
The youth who went there were very motivated. They were standing close to Palestine but couldn't even touch one speck speck of its soil.
The situation was tense in other camps, where no one was martyred or injured. However, the same scene was repeated. Sadness enveloped the camp as people held back tears.
What can we say? May God grant us patience. We have to be patient until we go back to Palestine.
The entire camp is mourning its martyrs.
It's for the blood of the martyrs.
We are very heartbroken. Every drop of blood is dripping on our heart.
May 15th, 2011 will undoubtedly be ingrained in the memories of all those who participated in the March of the Return, and the scars and wounds will remain a symbol in those memories. Just as the March of the Return united the camps of the diaspora in Lebanon, it also united the outcome of this march. Across all camps, the image is of a general strike, black banners and anger combined with pride. Rasha Zain, NBN.
The views expressed on Mosaic are from contributing broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible by grants from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, the Firedoll Foundation, and by support of viewers like you. Thank you. Watch Mosaic World News online. Stay up to date with breaking news, read our blog, get transcripts of past shows, and more at linktv.org/mosaic.
This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. network dedicated to global and national news, uncompromising documentaries, and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.